How you going, everybody? Whether you're watching in Sydney, in the northeast of the United States, or anywhere in between, thank you for joining us for this post-Week 18 edition of the NFL Brekkie Show, presented by the Next Gen Ford Everest. Conquer every day with the Next Gen Ford Everest. I'm Phil Murphy. This is my good pal, Laurie Horesh. And Laurie, the NFL season now officially down to 14. We started, of course, with 32. Heading into the last a segment of games, last round of fixtures, there were three teams vying, or eight teams rather, vying for the last three playoff spots. We now know who they are, where they're situated, and the relative route to the Super Bowl for anybody who's keen to be crowned champions at Super Bowl 57 in Phoenix.
We do. And I think when you look at the NFC side of things, you have two teams at the top of your NFC power rankings. They're the 49ers and the Eagles, deservingly that Eagles team clinching the number one spot, very much the number one seed, home field throughout. Business trips in some manners for who they faced, up against a team of second and third string Giants players, with the Giants having no more seeding to play for, taking a spell and getting themselves nice and healthy for week one of the playoffs, the wild card weekend that upon us, the super wild card weekend that's upon us. And then over on the AFC side of things, the Chiefs got it done early. The Bills had an emotional experience and day and game to really kick off the Monday viewing party for Australians down here. And we'll touch on just how they literally kicked that off. And I think even with a team like Cincinnati Bengals, who have deservingly thrust themselves into this conversation at the top of the AFC, we get a team that, look, against a Lamar Jackson-less and a J.K. Dobbins-less Ravens team. Again, we're talking business trips here, but they remove any of the coin toss machinations, permutations that we know floated into the NFL world early in that week, early last week. So a little bit of just confirmations at the top. And then, yes, how it played out down the bottom there with the Seattle Seahawks taking care of what they needed to do against the LA Rams in emphatic circumstance. Quandre Diggs, with one of the great boasting moments of the season, plucks a big interception on a deep ball from Baker Mayfield to Van Jefferson that looked like it could be turning the playoff picture upside down. Well, at least the bottom bit upside down. It's not really upside down. It's kind of middle out. But anyway, we won't get into that. Plucks an interception on a ball that Baker really need to fire in on a line there, not put so much air under it, and then held the ball out. Rather, don't worry about return yardage or anything that in a close, tight game into overtime. Let's just hold that ball out there towards Bobby Wagner and the rest of the Rams sideline and show him just what he's taken away from them. So plenty of spice to finish this one off. The Detroit Lions and the Green Bay Packers giving us plenty of feistiness and in almost appropriate circumstances, with the Detroit Lions not making the playoffs. I know they were a sexy playoff pick for a lot of people in the media, a lot of people around the game coming into this, but they really did confirm that, hey, rather than just go for that step up to 5 or 6 wins, can they throw themselves into that 7 to 9 win bracket? They did exactly that. No postseason trip, but in typical Dan Campbell fashion, they were very feisty. They were very kneecappy, very bitey, very scratchy, very clawy, and spoiled the party for Green Bay. And spoiled the party for Aaron Rodgers, who didn't want to give his jersey away at the end of the game and saying you might want to hold on to that one. To sum that up, did I get that? We summed up what we got over the past 24 hours in decent fashion there, Phil?
Fastest 3 minutes in sport, Laws. Your preamble to the NFL Brekkie Show. But it is the business end now of the season. 14 teams remain. One of them will be crowned Super Bowl champions and thus immortalized in NFL lore. But before we look at them, good morning, gents. Phil Weekly t-shirt check. I have some Steelers love, because yet again, under Mike Tomlin, 16 times in 16 seasons, they have not had a losing record. And this is a league designed for parity. It's a league designed to make it easier for the have-nots to climb the ladder. Not enough have climbed over the Steelers, irrespective of injury or rookie quarterback or offensive line falling apart. There have been 3 Steelers head coaches since 1969. Chuck Noll, Bill Cowher, and Mike Tomlin. 2 of them are in Canton in the Hall of Fame. Mike Tomlin is certainly on his way there. He is a model of consistency, and again, in a league that's not designed for it. So, Brad, because I cannot give the Steelers any more love heretofore, they are eliminated, and they were because the Dolphins, by hook or by crook, beat the Jets 9-6. At home with QB3 against the fighting Joe Flacco's. Because of that, the Steelers lose out then on a tiebreaker. So some love for the Steel City and Mike Tomlin, who did their job. Terrific defensive outing. They beat the Browns 28-14. But Laz, as I was saying, 14 teams alive. Before we look to them, and they're all we're going to be talking about over the next few weeks, I want to survey the 18 remaining teams who are no longer playing, some of whom had Black Monday today, as it's called around the NFL. Lovie Smith fired in the hours after the Texans win over the Colts. We know there's a coaching vacancy in Denver. Cliff Kingsbury, the inevitable end of that marriage in Arizona, and they also have their GM stepping down. So an open-see there. But as we look around the rest of the league and before we focus our eyes on the playoffs, if you were one of these 18 non-playoff teams, who would you want to be?
I can confess that when I was conjuring this segment yesterday, the Spice Girls were running exactly. Who do you really, really want to zig-a-zag? Who do you want to be? Who do you want to be drafting? Who do you want to be building as?
I was big on Sporty Spice in my youth. I must confess.
Sporty Spice. It was it was posh spice for me in the early days. I'll confess to that. And there's plenty of classmates from.
Yeah, it's about Clues thing. I get it.
Now, look, there's plenty of classmates in year 4, year 5, around 1998, 99. Oh, let's age myself at International Grammar that can confess to that preference for me. Not the most popular pick. There were plenty of Baby Spice fans out there. There's the cult of Ginger Spice and Sporty Spice fans like yourself. Scary getting her plaudits as well. Anyway, off the Spice Girls, but that's what we was thinking about. Who do you want to be, Phil? Who do you want to be when we look at these rebuilding teams? And I think this is firmly in your mind when you consider what happened. You mentioned the Lovie Smith firing, departure from the Houston Texans. What happened at the top of the draft board with the Texans not just snatching victory from the jaws of defeat, but snatching the number 2 pick from the jaws of the top overall pick. Oh, there's an alarm going off here in Sydney. That may be that might have just been an alert for Texans fans that this could be a little bit of a triggering moment. But nonetheless, what we saw there with the miraculous comeback from the Texans late in that game, we saw that top pick and the Bears, who have the answer at quarterback and have $130 million around that in cap space. Once they roll over around $10 million they've still got left on the books for the 2022 season, they're going to roll over. We're talking
that's
in the
like
realm
200 million Aussie, right, Loss, with the current exchange rate?
Even more. The backbone of my proposed Australian exchange program for ESPN is just how far the American dollar goes in Australia right now. Anyway, regardless. We see, and that's what came to me. The team I want to be is the Bears. We've got the Chicago Bears, the top overall pick in the draft. In a year, no, it's not Andrew Luck at the top of this NFL draft, but it's also not last year. Whether you're talking about Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, Levi's jeans, there is going to be interest at the top. There is going to, and not just in terms of the talent available, but the thirst of the teams around them. If you look at that top 7, there's, I think, eliminate the Arizona Cardinals and eliminate the Chicago Bears from consideration there. Every other team in that top 7 has very justifiably a chance to make a move at a quarterback. So you've got thirst in and around you. You do have actual talent resource that's coming into this draft class. You're going to have the ability to roll back, pick up some extra picks. You gave away a pick for Chase Claypool. Not sure whether you're happy with the return on value that now, especially as that pick is so high in the 30s. But you're going to have the opportunity to roll back, pick up a couple extra picks, maybe a couple extra top 100 picks, still be picking early in that first round. If you want to look towards fortifying something on the offense, you want to make a pick at receiver, defensive talent, we know how strongly that speaks in Chicago. There's going to be names, and we'll touch on a couple of them perhaps later in the show, that are going to be up there on that defensive line that really do speak to that midway culture. Then what you can do with cap space. It's not, you look at the early names on the wide receiver potential free agency list. No, it's not littered with future Hall of Famers or Pro Bowlers, but could you do smart things with like a Jacoby Myers who becomes free, add some actual professional talent around Justin Fields beyond a Darnell Mooney and start to build out. There is just so many avenues open for a team like the Chicago Bears, who are in a similar position in some ways to where the Jacksonville Jaguars were a year ago. You've got the first overall pick and you've got the quarterback answer. You know you have the quarterback answer.
And the Jags have the most cap space. They spent more in free agency than any other team.
And despite the jokes made about Christian Kirk's deal, they actually got pretty decent bang for their buck with a lot of their free agent acquisitions. But where their situation is better, this is a Jags team that also had massive questions on defense and had an offensive line that needed to be rebuilt. And they did a really good job of injecting talent in there. I don't know that there's Brandon Scherf available this offseason, but the Jags, there's a lot of comparisons and similarities there. I'd say that definitely more stable coaching situation in Chicago. But where it's better for the Chicago Bears versus what the Jags had is there are quarterbacks here. There are quarterbacks in this draft class, and there is immediate thirst around them to be able to roll back a few picks, 5 picks, who knows, as many as you want to really turn this draft class into a true transformation of a roster that you've answered your biggest question. Now, don't waste it. It's great that you've answered that spot at quarterback, but the best thing that you can have in the NFL is the answer at quarterback, a franchise quarterback on a rookie deal. One of the worst things you can do is waste that rookie deal. Now is not the time for that. The resources are there. So as we talk about who you really, really, really want to be for 23, that is my pick, Chicago Bears off the top. But I'm interested to hear where you take this one.
Yeah, Laz, they get my silver medal. It's a terrific position for all the reasons you stated. And for me, it wouldn't surprise me if setting off. Yeah, that's exactly right. Laurie's takes are so hot, he's setting off the smoke alarm. A +6 win season year over year for the Bears would be a terrific transformation. Elberflus would be in conversation next year for Coach of the Year. It would require Justin Fields to be better late in games. Now, whether that was a personnel thing or a psychological thing or a scheme thing.
Or a strategic thing.
Yeah, well, but again, two of those three are fixable. But the fact of the matter is, it would take those things to happen, and I believe it will. They're my silver medal. I think the Bears are going to be a 6 to 8 win team next year, which is a very significant step forward. But you take a team that has already taken that step, a team that has won 8 of its last 10 games, a team that has 4 picks in the first 58 itself. And whilst I don't disagree that they would be considering a move at quarterback, the play of their quarterback this year suggests perhaps it's not necessarily a necessity. I'm talking, I give the Bears my silver medal. The gold is going to the silver and blue of the Detroit Lions. Laz, once James Houston came back from injury, this team won 5 of 7. They have 5 of the first 80 picks, 4 of the first 58. Jared Goff, perhaps his best season as a pro, if not right on par with 2018 with the Rams, a team that went 13-3 and fell short 13-3 in a Super Bowl. He was number 5 in the league in QBR, 29 touchdowns, 7 picks. You take that 10 times out of 10, and now you add a finally healthy Jamison Williams to the mix, and like I mentioned, decent draft capital, and a fair amount of salary cap space. I think they're top half. They are top half of the league in terms of salary cap space. They can still add pieces. Laz, that defense grew up before our eyes. They got pieces back from injury. Aiden Hutchinson looks every bit the monster they drafted. And if you just want to see like OL offensive line, like, I feel like I need a cigarette film, watch Penei Sewell on that tunnel screen that they ran where he went, chipped a cornerback, got upfield and flattened a safety at 6'5", 335 pounds, a all-world athlete who was really learning the position well. That defense, if not for just being abysmal in the first half of the year, this is a 10 or 11 win team this year, and they're in the playoffs. Who else in that division? I'm with you. I'm thinking Aaron Rodgers was thinking, is this my last game again? And ultimately, when you keep asking that question, ultimately the answer is going to be yes. And I think the Vikings are going to regress to the mean next year. They're not going 11-0 in one-score games next year. This division is ripe for the taking. And for me, the Lions are there to do it and get to an 11-win mark, which you're looking at how they played in the second half of this season and the youth, especially in their front seven. That's not that hot of a take. See, no smoke alarms going off in my house.
They're not a team that plays with any fear. We saw that, whether it was the 2nd and 17 hook and ladder to really put themselves in position to drive home the end of the Packers campaign for the season. They're a team that plays without fear, and in doing so, they will strike fear into others. That starts at the top with Dan Campbell. It flows through with the faith that he has in his roster, the faith that he does have in a Jared Goff when put in a strong situation, good offensive line, young, improving weapons, DJ Chark making plays. We know Amon-Ra St. Brown, one of the underrated superstar receivers of the league.
Jamal Williams, top 3 most likable player in the league today.
Jamal Williams is the best. He is the reigning, defending, and undisputed champion of the mic of the NFL right now. The the turn he made, the emotional turn he pivoted in his post-game interview, going from tears to "do not doubt the dog I have in me," is one of the great. This is an Attitude Era peak wrestling promo level work that we're getting from Jamal Williams. You mentioned Jamison Williams, and he flashed. He disallowed touchdown yesterday, but his speed and his game-breaking ability flashes. And you're right, they're in a position where, think of the Kansas City Chiefs with Alex Smith, a really great infrastructure, a different type of coach, but certainly a coaching staff as well, if they can keep it all together, highly regarded in terms of what they do both sides of the ball, offensively, massively impressive. But what we're seeing there is we're in position where we're productive and we're going in the right trajectory with a veteran quarterback who is, let's say, middle tier at best for Jared Goff. We don't have to make a move, but we can make the right move when we want. They have a high draft pick here, courtesy of the trade, the trade that landed them, Jared Goff. They are in that position to make a wise, smart, unpanicked, and unpushed move, like the Chiefs did with Patrick Mahomes. They didn't have to jump. They knew they were doing decently and achieving decently and on a good trajectory as they were. And when they decide it's time, if that's this year, so be it. If the draft falls to them, or if it's in a subsequent season, they're in position where they're going to be able to work their assets that they currently have to place themselves in a move to make the necessary jump or to make the necessary pick when needed. So yeah, they're deservingly up here. The Bears starting, let's say, from a roster standpoint, certainly a lower tier from the exposure and hype around the coaching staff. Perhaps a lower status at the moment. But yeah, great shout with the Bears. We did get with
the difference of who is going to increase their win total more versus who's going to win more games.
Who's going to contend sooner. Yeah. We did get a lot of write-ins here. Brad Bolt had his the order he submitted, the Fighting Dan Campbell's, and then he wanted to be the cashed up Bears. The drop a QB in Jets, as I phrase him. Steve Wilkes, Panthers. I know Brad is a big Panthers fan, and he's impressed with what he's seen from Wilkes so far. The Riverboat Ron Commanders. Well, we'll see what the Commanders look like this time. In a week, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, we'll see who's calling the shots. An organization seemingly perennially in flux and in the spotlight, not always for the good reasons. Dan sent in, wouldn't it be some sort of parallel universe if another umming and ahhing Green Bay Packers quarterback ended up on the Jets next season? That defense is built to go. Not sure it would take much to get him with the size of that contract. If Rodgers wants to go, and we didn't see a moment of serious retirement emotions at the end of that game and walking off with Randall Cobb up the tunnel and wanting some privacy away from the cameras for a moment and nudging cameraman away for a moment. If he is back, it'll be interesting. Look, that's a heavy contract. There's, the numbers are big. The chance to make $50+ million is certainly a big motivator. But yeah, once you start getting to trades and who can absorb certain things, it's a complex matter. But yeah, I mean, I think let's just peel it back, put Rodgers to the side for a bit. The Jets have done a lot of good work on defense. When healthy, that offensive line was better this season, and we've seen the likes of Garrett Wilson emerge. And you do get your running back room does get healthier next year with the breakout we saw from Breece Hall. So plenty there for the Jets. As bad as it ended, there is promise, and Matty Lane is in lockstep with you. That Lions defense came on leaps and bounds late in the year. Maybe not so much faith in the Panthers or in their performance against the Panthers game, but they were very much improved overall.
Yeah, but that's the product of a young defense. Their eyes got confused in the backfield. They fixed that against the Packers. So I completely agree with the assessment against the Panthers, but as we're talking growth,
positive
Aaron
sign.
Jones didn't break out.
Yep. So he believes if GM can even sniff a repeat of this year's draft, then the Lions are in a good spot. So plenty to love there. We're getting plenty of feedback in, plenty of comments as the People Show continues, but that's who we really wanted to be. If you do have a submission, throw it in there. We'll bring it up throughout the show. But we are going to move on. Those are the wannabes. Those are the also-rans. Those are the teams bounced. Going from the bounced to teams that are looking to do a little bouncing, Phil.
Yeah.
Do you like dogs? That's the big question. Do you like underdogs? We're into the super wild card weekend is upon us. We have 3 matchups on the NFC side of things, 3 matchups on the AFC side of things. Some big questions around the health of quarterbacks like Tua Tagovailoa, who the latest update in the last half an hour is that he still hasn't been cleared for football activity per Mike McDaniel, and they're looking to get more clarity as they get towards Wednesday. And then Lamar Jackson, the flux that he is in as the Ravens prepare to do battle against the Cincinnati Bengals again on the road in Cincinnati. While it's not the same level of concussion discussion that surrounds the health of Tua Tagovailoa and what he's been through this season, there is so much tension in the air and so much we don't know about the vibes, the feeling, the relationship between both Lamar Jackson's party and the Baltimore Ravens' contract. Negotiations have played out of late and obviously not landed. I want to put those games almost. We can talk about those games, but in terms of picking an underdog, I think it's hard to feel really strongly about either of those teams and the contest they have ahead. But if you're looking at the rest of the matchups here, what jumps out to you as underdogs, you really can make a case for doing some big bouncing in week one of the playoffs?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, if Lamar Jackson plays, that's one I like. The Ravens currently catching 6.5 points, but that number could go up to 10 if it is confirmed that Jackson will not play. And if Huntley is out as well, that number balloons then to probably 13 or 14, which is what it was when these teams played a week ago. Even though the Bengals have lost now Alex Kappa, Ted Karras saying that he's such a big part of the offensive line, an offensive line that was a problem in last year's playoffs, was pretty solid through this year, if not consistent. They didn't change any offensive line configurations through 14 or 15 weeks. And then they lose Lyle Collins and they lose Alex Kappa in back-to-back weeks. Now it's big questions for the Bengals. I think if not in this round, in future rounds, that will be ultimately what brings down the fighting Joe Burrows. But this week, as we're talking dogs, when you pitched, we were on the phone with this last night. We were watching live when the Lions ran their little hook and ladder, and we watched basically the second half of that game together. It was lovely. And when you pitched this topic, an answer, and I've slept on it and I stand by it. It is from Phil's Mafia. It is the muscle. A game that we saw on Christmas Eve here stateside, Christmas Day. If you're watching in New South Wales at Laws's mansion, the Giants falling to the Vikings by 3 on a 61-yard Greg Joseph field goal at the siren. The Giants standing toe-to-toe with the Vikings, and now they have arrested Saquon Barkley, arrested Daniel Jones, and a Vikings defense that's 31st in total defense. Okay, you don't buy yards overall. Well, they're 30th in yards per pass attempt allowed and 22nd in yards per carry allowed. This is a bad defense. And if the Giants, who like to maintain possession, can run the ball, keep Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson off the field, minimize their possessions, and come away with points, they got to be good in the red zone. There's a clear avenue for the Giants to run back the exact game we saw from Christmas Eve, Christmas Day, but this time be on the right side of a 3-point margin.
How appropriate that when we go back to our Mafia episode that you would send the muscle to take out the rat. We've long identified that the Vikings were the team that we didn't trust. We knew something was up there. A la Matt Damon and The Departed. We knew something was going on.
And you know what? They pulled the trigger. They did the hit when they were in Buffalo and pulled off the miracle 4th and 18. And you're like, man, by hook or by crook, they did it. Maybe we can trust them.
But you're sending in the muscle there. So I know obviously very different accents, but is this Mark Wahlberg famous for his more Bostonian presence on film? But you're sending in Mark Wahlberg to do the muscle job here and finish this off. Yeah, and you back a defense that, for whatever you make of the consistency of talent throughout the Giants' defense, they're very well coached. They're at times aggressive, but situationally they've been very sound. And you back that mental, the brains trust there, the mental acumen, the collective staff that they have there on the Giants sideline to have a sound plan for how do we limit Justin Jefferson? And there's been examples of that in recent weeks. Go back and watch what the Packers did. How do we, if we don't have the same type of cattle there, how do we mirror what lessons can we take to slow that down? And once you start to frustrate that avenue, we know that big time moments, Wink Martindale can get a little itchy to start to heat up Kirk Cousins. Just a little bit. Just a little bit. Okay, we're talking underdogs. Now you're going to accuse me of being like huge swaths of Cowboys fans out there on social media or in group chats or whatever in going into full panic mode after that hapless, shocking, embarrassing, disgraceful, sloppy performance against the Washington Commanders, leading to them being officially 0-1 against Major Tuddy, the new Washington Commanders pig logo. No, what's it called? Mascot. Yeah. So, but I sense fear and I sense danger here for the Dallas Cowboys, and plus 3 points for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers at home. I think if I'm looking at this objectively, which is hard, but still, if you're looking at this objectively, go football glasses on. I don't know how you could favor the Cowboys in this game. They're talking, they're giving away 3 points on the road. That seemed like a 6-point favorite, almost a touchdown favorite, toe to toe. Yes, their record is better. They've collectively been better over the largest sample size of the season, but they are limping into the playoffs, not just metaphorically because of the performance they put up against a divisional rival that had nothing but pride to play for, but health-wise, they are literally limping. Now, they're expecting to have Leighton Vander Esch back. They're expecting to get Jonathan Hankins back. Jerron Bland, one of the quiet breakout. He's not going to get Rookie of the Year awards, but he should get Defensive Rookie of the Year honorable mentions. The interceptions, the production, the ball productivity, and the way he's come on as a slot corner, they're expecting those three to play. And Tyler Biadasz, their starting center. They're expecting them to be available for practice. We're not getting there to inactives and actives just yet. The extra day should help them. They're playing the wildcard weekend closer on Monday Night Football at Tampa Bay, but on ESPN. The areas through which the Cowboys are susceptible, their lack of skill, talent at the second cornerback spot, their inability to make up. Anthony Brown wasn't having a great season, but they have fallen off even further since his injury, season ending as it was. Tom Brady they didn't play a lot. They pulled the starters early against the Atlanta Falcons, but this was a team that didn't lack for moving the ball, was able to get end zone drives going on. Chris Godwin's production inside the slot has been consistent over the back half of the season. It's 50, 60, 70, 100 plus yards each and every week for the past couple of months. Mike Evans, we saw the spark and the emergence that he had a week ago. And we're even seeing, whether it's K-Dot and getting production out of the tight end spot. I fear that the injuries and the inconsistency in Dallas's pass coverage of late opens up the ability for Tom Brady to just pick apart. The Dallas Cowboys pass rush has slowed down as well. So they're not heating up quarterbacks as much as they were with the four-man rush, or when they do send pressures, when they do send blitzes, hasn't been as successful. That's on Dan Quinn. So if you're not hitting Tom Brady up as much, and his work against the blitz or against the pressure has not aged like a fine wine like so much of the rest of his game over the last couple of years. I don't like this matchup at all. I think this is a Cowboys team that is also facing more pressure, tons more pressure than the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who knows what lies ahead for the Dallas Cowboys, for Tom Brady, for the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Who knows whether he's a free agent in the offseason. The Dallas Cowboys, though, their goal is a Super Bowl this year, and they're not playing their best football. And they say pressure makes diamonds, sure. But if you've got cracks in the wall, pressure can rip those things open as well. And if the Dallas Cowboys, and I think it should be known throughout, I imagine it's the chatter in North Texas right now, and it would be interesting to know what the chatter is like inside the building. But you finish the season like that with an embarrassing showing against the Washington Commanders, finish the regular season, and then if you find yourself one and done from where this was, and I think everything is on the table from a coaching standpoint, particularly in a season or in an off season where if you want to make your play for Dan Quinn to be a head coach, or the bigger name, if you want to make your run at Sean Payton, that is happening now. You missed that boat, and that boat is gone. So I can't understate the amount of pressure that seems to be surrounding the star at this point. And I've said it before, and I'll say it again, for a franchise that for the past almost 30 years, has not exactly handled hype and pressure and success very well.
Laz, if they were going to San Francisco, I would agree with you. Man, I've seen Tampa play in person. They lack creativity. They're underwhelming, and I don't think that they can keep Brady upright long enough for him to make Dallas pay for their over-aggression on the outside. They love to jump routes. They love to ball hawk and go for turnovers. If you're an offense with some, double moves or, ways to make that aggressiveness costly, then you're to be feared. I think that this is a game in which Tom Brady throws a couple picks. Dallas has to capitalize offensively, because if this is 20-14 at the start of the fourth quarter in favor of the Cowboys, The Brady magic is real, and the pressure you're talking about will be completely amplified for both sides of the ball for Dallas. But I like the matchup for them. I'm not as worried about them going on the road and getting the win as I am the other top wild card team going to the Sunshine State of Florida and pulling off a win when favored. I'm starting to feel like the momentum behind Duval County is a real thing in that game. So I don't want to take away the opportunity for you to refute any of my Bucks Cowboys points, but if you're talking to me about a dog I like, yeah, it's the 4-5 matchup, the home team catching points in Florida, but it's actually in a game between quarterbacks making their playoff debuts, both Justin Herbert against Trevor Lawrence.
Has there been a finer salad matchup on an NFL field? The hair that we are talking about there with
since the 70s, brother.
No. We're talking the great Kenny Stabler, maybe? Like, there's some serious main action going on in this one. I have suggested on multiple platforms that I believe the loser should have to shave the top, not all off, not the whole hair off, but just the top off and walk around with a hellacious mullet. I'm not sure that the teams have officially bought into that or not. My representatives are reaching out to see if we can make this something, but plenty on the line regardless. But this, for the Jacksonville Jaguars, I pumped up Trevor Lawrence, top 6 quarterback, and I will never leave that hill for the rest of this. That's how it'll close this season. You, on the money, doubled down. We jumped in the hot take time machine, and your statement, your belief that the Jags were going to take out the AFC South has come to fruition. They
were 3 games back too. I had them. I think they were 4-7, and the Titans were 7-4, and I held firm. I did not deviate from my Jacksonville support.
No, you didn't. And I think from an offensive standpoint, Trevor Lawrence continued to overachieve with surrounding wide receiver talent he has. He's turned at tight end. He's turned Evan Ingram into one of the few fantasy studs that exists at the tight end position. And we know the explosive ability of a Travis Etienne, given a little bit of room, given a little bit of space to wiggle and break free. Then on defense, no, this isn't the most overwhelming and complete and consistent defensive roster, but they did a really, really commendable job in how they looked to take away Derrick Henry on early downs in that AFC title game. I think they deserve credit for that. Henry's going to break one loose every now and then. That's just it's just science, maths, and probability that speed and that size, strength, and weight at some point is going to bounce open and create his own lane. But a commendable job there. So we're interested to see the game plan and what they look to take away from the Chargers. And then what hangs around with a team like the Chargers is, I hate to say it, as someone who, not alone in the NFL media world, someone who loves them on paper and buys into them at the start of every season. But Chargers fans know this. Chargers going to charge. And are they going to do this at this point in time against an offense, give an opportunity to an offense and a quarterback that is only growing and growing and playing with an immense level of confidence?
And I will say there were a couple throws. If you go back and watch the Jags game against the Titans, you could see the pressure was on Lawrence. Again, a guy who was excelled at the highest level, at the collegiate level, but in a functional playoff game against the Titans. You win, you advance, you lose, your season's over. It was like that for both teams. Lawrence did miss some throws. He overshot Zay Jones in the end zone. I mean, he missed some throws that in preceding weeks he would like to have back. He cannot do that here. But the Jags defense has played very energized at home. They've won 5 straight overall, but they've won 4 straight true home games, whereas the Chargers haven't been road tested in the last half of the year. Their last 4 road games in Denver as a lame duck squad, no pressure there. At the Colts, all due respect, at the Raiders, who had just been eliminated from the playoffs, and at the Cardinals, who are perhaps the team with the greatest uptick in performance when they travel than when they play at home. They went more than a calendar year without winning a home game. Those are the Chargers' last 4 road games. Now they go into a hornet's nest. Now they go into an area where it's going to be feverish for a fan base that finally has a team to support. It's one of those, man, you give me a coin flip game in an overdue season for Justin Herbert. And I think more expectation than the 1 point that they're getting right now in Vegas would suggest. I don't know, man. I'm going to keep on the Jaguars train. And I think it's going to come off the rails in Kansas City. Don't get me wrong, if that ultimately is where they play, if there's not an upset elsewhere. And I don't think there will be because of the aforementioned quarterback concerns in Baltimore and Miami. But man, I like this team in this game. I like them getting one done, and Doug Peterson just getting this team to punch just that much more above its weight class.
All right. I think those were two at the top of our list of, at least that was the top of my list for the underdog that I felt confident in. So look at the rest of the landscape. I find it hard to find a lot of reason to doubt the San Francisco 49ers.
Yeah.
Talk about their record. I quoted it before, and it keeps growing week in, week out, that teams do not win the week after they play the 49ers. That tells you what type of physicality and what type of competitiveness.
They're the Dan Hooker of the
NFL. But what that shows you that they're mentally up for it, that they're physically prepared and then mentally up for it come game time. And that is an element that we do see teams no-show in the postseason. And I'm not just speaking from heartbroken experience here. We do see teams no-show.
Dipped in form. I mean, they got to win against a Rams team with nothing for which to play, but needed 2 shots at a game-winning field goal to do it. So I like the Niners by 13 to 16 points.
If I was drawing up a pathway for the Seahawks, though, I think it's something we've touched on recently, that individual matchups in the secondary is not the strong point of San Francisco 49ers. Tyler Lockett and DK Metcalf both game-breaking ability, incredible playmaking talent in different ways, but also at each and every level of the field. DK Metcalf can get physical over the middle. He can break off yards after the carry, whether that's given space or making space with his own physicality. And Tyler Lockett is an artisan at every level who is one of the most enjoyable deep route runners in the NFL. I think you come out and you throw haymakers from the start. You come out, you give Geno Smith all the green lights. The offense, you put faith, hopefully, in that young offensive line to give him enough.
You do what the Cardinals did. First play from scrimmage was a quick play, wildcat, pitch it to David Blau, jump ball to AJ Green, and he was the biggest kid on the block.
To 2014 or 2015 AJ Green.
Yes.
But I think you come out and you throw bombs from the start. You load up your best against what is probably the weakest spot on a very imposing and dominant 49ers defense. And you say, catch us if you can, outmuscle us at the catch point if you can. We're going to take shots. Geno Smith has thrown more than his fair share of delightful, delicious 40, 50-plus yard bombs. We saw another phenomenal ball in that game against the Rams. I put faith in him. Where that leads in the offseason, hopefully, I think a lot of people would like to see a Geno Smith reunion, him to come back and continue this career renaissance in Seattle. But with the talent you have available at that spot, whether you have to move the pocket, whatever, just give Geno the time early to take those shots. And if they do come off and you're able to strike a couple times quickly, then you're putting Brock Purdy in a situation that he hasn't been in too often. You're putting him behind the 8 ball. Yes, they're immensely talented. Like they needed Elijah Mitchell to come back and run for 11 yards a carry. Like they needed Deebo Samuel to come back. That they're so stacked on offense, the 49ers. But
George Kittle, red zone.
Yes.
Sure-handed as they get.
They're still being guided around the park by a very young quarterback who hasn't been exposed to this level of football, this stage, and certainly that type of scenario. So you come out, and that's the path for me. I think the 49ers win this. The 49ers might pick from the NFC to make it to the Super Bowl. But if you're drawing up a how-to, a recipe, that recipe is a heavy dose of Geno Smith's right arm early, often, and put that stellar talent, 14 and 16, to very, very good use.
Yeah. And Laz, I agree. I think it's the NFL. It's a league designed for parity, as we've said. And you get a turnover. The bright lights are too much for Brock Purdy. Geno Smith, they wrote me off. I didn't write back. We regained that energy from week 1. Sure. But it's going to take a few of those things to align for the Seahawks to come away from San Francisco, make the short flight back up north with more playoffs in store for them. But Laz, as we look to the future, it is time for the Next Gen, brought to you by the Next Gen Ford Everest. Conquer every day with the Next Gen Ford Everest, a weekly honor we bestow upon the second-year player who we think is on an upward trajectory. And Laz, it takes something special to be named twice for this honor in the same season. We fought it. We looked through box scores. We combed statistics. We combed film. You didn't sleep. You had a flat white and with skim milk, and you chugged 5 of them, and you came away, and that's it. You didn't take an ounce of sleep. We couldn't do anything but award this award twice. It's going back to Ford Field, but not to the front seven like got it last week, but somebody who won it earlier this season, Kirby Joseph, the first player ever to intercept Aaron Rodgers 3 times in the same season. Only one player's ever intercepted Aaron Rodgers 3 times in their career. His name's Brian Urlacher. He's in the Hall of Fame. But Kirby Joseph, as a first-year player, perhaps should have had 4. There was a hands to the face call that prevented an earlier interception. He's a guy you and I both touted in the draft as somebody who had unique measurables that could fit very well to his position. He was a high school volleyball player, so we knew his ability to time and high point the ball was special, that cross-sport attribute that he has, and also an ultra-long wingspan. And I think that is what has had him have success against somebody like Aaron Rodgers. Kirby Joseph stands 6'1", 6 feet tall. He's a very average height for a safety. His wingspan is 6'8". So what used to be a tight window is now a closed window. And for a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, who has made a living out of throwing the ball into tight windows, he tries to do that against Kirby Joseph. And again, one of the interceptions was kind of a lollipop underthrown ball. But other quarterbacks looking to do that against Kirby Joseph will be sorely mistaken, because he does jump so well. He high points the ball so well. And his arms are so long that he'll get the passes that other guys, frankly, biologically would just miss. And what I love about Kirby Joseph is post-game, at JCurb25 on Twitter posted, quote, "If we not going, y'all not going either. I don't care." Which was the energy the Lions had in that game. Hey, our season's done. We're not going to let you guys celebrate at our expense. We're going into your house and we're shutting down your offense and maybe ending Aaron Rodgers' career. And that's what Kirby Joseph and the Lions did to close out in the regular season NFL finale. A little plot twist: Aaron Rodgers falling short, Kirby Joseph ending with his hand held high.
What more can you say? You've laid it all out there. Kirby Joseph, the manifestation, the embodiment, and the flag bearer for the mentality that Dan Campbell laid out there. That's exactly right. We're not going. Well, neither are you. And we're going to do every damn thing we can to ensure that to happen. The football character, the football instincts you're seeing play out there. Taking advantage of those opportunities, removing parts of the field. This is someone who you don't even need to see the All-22 film or the goal line angle to see. This guy sees the field. I'm quoting Legend of Bag of Ants here. He sees the field. He reads the field. He has that anticipation instincts, and also just kind of the calm mentality and patience and decision-making back there. At such a young age, to have put himself alongside Brian Urlacher for the career lead in interceptions on Aaron Rodgers. And really, it's a career lead with an asterisk, because he should have had 4. The hands to the face didn't. It was the right flag. It was correct penalty, but it didn't affect Aaron Rodgers' throw. And it didn't impact the throw, and it certainly didn't impact the interception. But that just speaks to the playmaking ability from a safety prospect, defensive prospect that wasn't the most touted in his draft class. He slips into that kind of, he'd be a good top 100 type of pick, that conversation on the day 2. That's where his kind of buzz was around, and he is so far already surpassed that. And as the Detroit Lions, we've talked about the next gen of their defensive front that has come on leaps and bounds. So much of that talent is ready to go and ready to leap forward in 2023 and go on. The secondary is probably going to require a little more attention, and the Lions are in great position to address that. But at the core of that, centerpiece of that, and the maestro back there, Kirby Joseph, is in phenomenal position to be that man for this team, the Detroit Lions, that truly could be the next gen power of the NFC North.
And as that front seven matures and goes into next season and learns the skills of pass rushing, becomes more disciplined in their run defense, expect more situations in which desperate throws or out of rhythm throws or pressured throws happen. Whatever the preseason market is on Kirby Joseph interceptions next season, I'm going to take the over, because this guy is continuing to learn the NFL game. And if he can do this to Aaron Rodgers, he can do it to darn near anybody. Laz, we love that. What else do we love?
Well, you know what? We love a good moment. We love a moment that grabs hold of us as not just NFL viewers, but sports viewers, that tickles our fancy, not just when it comes to the on-field production, but the narrative, the emotion, the storyline that transcends the game. And nothing has transcended the NFL over the past week or so, like the Damar Hamlin story and his recovery in the last few days, to the point where it was announced today from the hospital, and he tweeted himself, and it's come out that he has been discharged from the hospital. He has made his way back to Buffalo. An amazing moment for his family, for himself, for his friends, for his teammates, for Bills fans, and anybody that whose heart was going out. And it was most of the football, all of the footballing world, whose heart was going out to him and his loved ones during what was a really trying week. But the scene that played out, we're talking about I'm loving it moment. This one is hard to beat. We may as well crown it the I'm loving it moment for the entire regular season, the entire NFL season, maybe the decade. The opening kickoff for the Buffalo Bills at home in a game against a fierce and historic division rival, New England Patriots. Nyheim Hines taking that thing to the house. As Jason Garrett, of all people, pointed out, what was looked like a middle kickoff return, set up to go up the middle, seeing the opportunity to bounce it out to the right and tear down the sideline. The sound that came through, it wasn't just the decibels. You could almost hear the disbelief and awe of the fans, of the coaching staff, of his teammates, as that is how the Bills opened this contest in week 18 from everything that they've gone through. 3 years and 3 months, that number 3, since their last kickoff return touchdown. They have 2 on the day. Hines would double the effort later in that game. Josh Allen talked about it as a spiritual moment. Wherever you land on the love and spirituality spectrum, that certainly felt like an out-of-body experience for what was being watched there and what was being taken in. Sean McDermott, pretty stoic character on the sidelines. Usually you saw the emotion pouring down his face. That's an I'm loving it moment. You know, that is one of the most chilling and cold and scary scenes we've witnessed in an NFL field in modern times and recent times throughout the history of the NFL. That is one of the most beautiful scenes I've seen. That roar was one unlike any other on an NFL field, and deservingly gets our Week 18 nod for the I'm loving it moment of the week.
And Laws, everybody was watching. Bills getting the ball first. Patriots win the toss and defer as they do. How's this team going to respond after a near tragedy? Harrowingly close to outright tragedy on national and international TV. First touch of the ball, Nyheim Hines. And as you said, with the number 3 hung up everywhere and ubiquitous, 3 years and 3 months. And not to be numerology and that kind of stuff can get a little dorky, but it just that 3 years and 3 months with the number 3 on patches on chests goes back for a touchdown. And it was disbelief. It's almost cliche in the Hollywood script, but sports is the best reality show. And Hines to do something that is rare, to do it again. Well, you didn't believe it? Watch me do it again. The 11th player ever to have 2 kickoff return touchdowns in the same game. First time it's ever happened for the Bills. And I drew this comparison on SportsCenter, and I went back and forth on it because I didn't want to equate the two. But since the Bills' 4 falls and losing 4 Super Bowls, for 4 in Super Bowls, the most difficult moment for a Bills fan in terms of result was the Music City Miracle. Final seconds of a playoff game in Nashville. They kick it off. Ball's tossed to Frank Wycheck. He throws it across the field. Was it a forward lateral? Was it illegal? Was it an illegal pass? What? Still debated, but Kevin Dyson catches it and goes 60 yards on the final play. The Music City Miracle coined heartbreak in Buffalo. And 23 years to the day after tears, sobbing was brought to faces in Buffalo, you get tears of a different sort at Ralph Wilson Stadium, tears of joy in a moment that, you know, I don't think I'm overstating it. A lot of people said, hey, this whole situation is going to be okay. In light of very positive news out of Cincinnati, Damar Hamlin's health, we've gotten more so today. And like, as you mentioned, that he's returned home to Buffalo. Unimaginable scenes in the pregame, somehow elevated in game with the first touch of the ball. It's the best moment in the NFL this season. It's the best moment reflexively on the field that I can remember. And it's this is the easiest superlative anything we've had all season. It's Nyheim Hines. Why am I having so much trouble saying that name now? I said it 50 times yesterday. Nyheim Hines, kickoff return touchdown, first touch of the ball. Mac is I'm loving it moment. Done and dusted.
Oh, well, let's stay in the AFC side of things because it's time to move on from that singular moment to a dual award, a double award. Pairs, friends, the NFL Tag Team Champions of the World of the Week. And as drama abounded throughout Week 18, what was going on after the Chicago Bears did what we expected, which was take a heavy loss against the Minnesota Vikings, Justin Fields not playing. They took care of their side of the equation. Yep. Then they needed the Houston Texans to an upset of sorts, I guess, against a pretty lowly Colts team. Yeah. The Houston Texans have a duo of receiving talent, one wide receiver and one tight end, Phil. I'm going to throw it to you, that deserve some acknowledgement for their ridiculous tag team effort in the final stages of what would be a draft turning and who knows, maybe even future defining closing drive against that Indianapolis team.
Yeah, Laz, they turned heel. It was the Texans, they just needed to go out there and get through 60 minutes and have fewer points than the Colts, and they would have the number one pick. But like the Hart Foundation, with Jimmy Hart on the mic, Lovie Smith calling the shots, he apparently knew, hey, I'm not going to be around for the number one pick. What do I care who has it? You can take the coach out of Chicago, former Bears coach, former University of Illinois coach, still got that Chicago in him. And he's got Jordan Akins and Brandon Cooks to thank. Akins going for 4 catches, 70 yards, 2 scores. Brandon Cooks, 5 catches on 6 targets for 106 yards and a score. And Laz, they were in the right position. They're down to touchdown with 3 minutes to go. They go 14 plays, 83 yards in 2 minutes, 43 seconds to not just get in position to tie the game, but they go for 2 in the win. And part of that drive, a 4th and 12 to Cooks that goes 30 yards, a dime from Davis Mills, upheld on review. And then facing a 4th and 20, Akins, 28-yard touchdown. And if you thought him hitting his finisher wasn't enough. No, he put in another sharpshooter. He catches a 2-point conversion and snatching defeat from the jaws of victory in a macro sense, because they now give away the number one pick. Players who don't care about that nonsense. We're trying to make a roster. And a coach who doesn't care about what the next guy's going to pick, I loved it. People were saying, oh, this is why Houston. No. Who believe them picks? It's why I think Sean McVay might not be coming back. What does he care what the Rams have after he wins a Super Bowl? They have 2 picks in the first 5 rounds, do the Rams. I don't think Sean McVay is going to come back. I wouldn't if I were him. Not there. Maybe go somewhere else. But with the Texans, this was the ultimate heel move in getting a win. And in terms of rational self-interest, it made sense for all parties involved. It left people scratching their heads. But really, it just frustrates Texans fans because, well, now we got to trade assets to have Bryce Young on our roster next year in all likelihood.
You know, did the Colts have interest in ideally Bryce Young or the first overall quarterback picked in the draft not landing in the AFC South? Perhaps. But yeah, for Lovie Smith, I mean, given the roster that he inherited, and honestly, before that with Coach Culley in 2021, the roster
should
that
not have been fired, Coach Culley.
The roster that he inherited and the table that was set for them and where they achieved, you know, the Texans under Lovie Smith finishing with 3 wins and a tie, that's overs for what I expected. Whatever the win-loss mark was set in Vegas, regardless, that was overs for what they were playing with. From Lovie Smith, who was defensive mind, look at some of the performances from some of the young defensive talent, the likes of Jalen Petrie, Derek Stingley. We've seen Dameon Pierce, who could have been in the Offensive Rookie of the Year conversation had he not been injured and ruled out for the rest of the season. And, you know, for the Texans, for Texans fans, you feel a certain way because those that have stuck through have shown an immense amount of loyalty over a relatively short time in terms of how long the franchise has been around. But considering the limited amount of success, the wasted careers of a J.J. Watt, the wasted and offshooted careers of a DeAndre Hopkins, they've shown an immense amount of loyalty. But for the Texans brass, with what they've done with their last two coaches of color, it should be noted how quickly they were sent packing, and the curve of performance that they were seemingly battling against when compared to the talent on the roster. It's hard to feel bad at all for the Texans brass for what they've set up there. They're now going into a period of, we're seeing the names come out for the next head coach that seem to be trending younger. All the candidates so far have ranged between the ages of about 42 and 36. But Lovie Smith with an outstanding heel departure that neutral fans thoroughly enjoyed. This is quality wrestling writing here. And as you said, Chicago Bears, great. Coached in Illinois. Never take the guy out of Chicago. Can't take the Chicago out of the guy. So a tumultuous and tense and drama-filled and storyline twisting ending to really a pay-per-view card ending for the Texans, and one that does the best things the great theater should do. It leaves the audience wondering, who on earth am I going for in this situation?
Yeah, coached in Champaign, in the shadows of Chicago, and now they're popping champagne in Chicago because Lovie got the job done. Now, former head coach of the Texans got the job done for the Bears. Laz, before we let the people go, there's no Monday night NFL game, Tuesday morning, midday, in Australia, New Zealand. But there is quality football to be watched. The College Football Playoff National Championship game between the TCU Horned Frogs and Georgia Bulldogs. Got that frog in them or got that dog in them? We're going to find out. The Bulldogs, a heavy favorite. They're the reigning champs. TCU looking for its first national championship in 87 years. Stars abound on both sides, so we thought it was appropriate to point out, again, some of the next gen, brought to you by the next gen Ford Everest. Conquer every day with the next gen Ford Everest. You and I, on a previous iteration of this show, had our Monday night kiss of death, the beso de muerte, that we would do. We're not doing that, I don't think. But I'm giving you a future NFL player to watch today. So if you tune in and you don't have partisan interest for the Frogs or the Dogs, you got somebody to look out for. And Laz, I'm starting with somebody who we need to look out for at the top of the draft. If the Bears don't trade this pick, we know they're not going QB. They could well go with number 88 in Bulldogs red, Jalen Carter. Now in last year's draft, Trayvon Walker out of Georgia goes number 1. Jordan Davis, Devontae Wyatt, first-round picks. Some people thought on tape Jalen Carter popped more than any of those dudes. And now he's a year further mature. He lines up the 1 technique, 3 technique, 5 technique. He's got burst to the backfield. He's got lateral agility. Only question, perhaps not the strongest base. You can hit the squat rack for that. This guy is a surefire impact player at the NFL. The only question is who gets him and in how many different ways, given defensive scheme, will they be willing to line him up? Scheme versatile, exciting player. Watch number 88 with the G on his lid. Jalen Carter.
Gotta love a guy rocking 88 in a primetime game, throw up the X. But yeah, look, Jalen Carter was a name that we were both tossing around. I'm very happy that you have chosen to highlight him. And now I could easily just, not step out of the first round and take another name that's just floating around there. But Phil, I have a type.
Johnston for TCU, you could have gone with him.
I have a type. And the type is, we'll confess, it's neither of the Australian punters represented today, both TCU and Georgia boast an Australian punter. So we will have an Australian national champion by the end of the day, but I have a type, Phil. And slightly undersized, defensive back, great football smarts, good football IQ, instincts, anticipation, playing the middle of the field. That's going to speak to me. It's been Elijah Molden in the past, Jalen Petrie, we've mentioned on this show. But this one for me, staying on the Georgia side of things. Let's go with Christopher Harris, 5'10", 188 pounds of safety playmaking ability. Yeah, he is a little bit undersized, but anticipation will mess around with the quarterback's eyes and bait. He drives on the ball. He will show toughness despite not having the biggest frame. And you love the speed to make breaks on the sideline. This, for me, fits exactly the mold I'm after. This is where I will look. I'm in the early stages of draft study, and when we stack up the prospects that we watch come the end of April, my defensive back, particularly undersized defensive back list, is looking longer than most. And this is one right off the top here. I think we've got playmaking ability, and for someone who is going to appeal to football tragics who can see the football instincts and IQ jump off the tape, this is the pick for me. So yes, I feel a little bit rude that we're not touching. Neither of us went with one of the Horned Frogs here. I feel I don't want to slight them. Cinderella story. Certainly the underdogs in this one, but Christopher Smith. Or you've got number 88 at I imagine plus 300 pounds, and I've got all 188 pounds of my safety pick there. But should absolutely throw a deserving shout out to our two Australians representing in this one. We've got Brett Thorson running out for Georgia, and we have Geordie Sandy running out for TCU, and some great content on Geordie Sandy we surfaced on espn.com.au in the lead up to this one, which is only a couple hours away. But Phil, look, I mean, what the future is now with Kirby Joseph, the future is coming with our two picks here, next gen Ford Everest presenting both of those, and we get to say goodbye to the regular season, knowing that we've got only more postseason fun. Particularly when I look at that AFC side of things to come over the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, we got Kirby Joseph getting the honors earlier with Ford, and then we got Kirby Smart's fellas on that defensive side for Georgia. Kirby Smart, Georgia head coach, heavy favorites today. And if you look at draft boards, you see 4 or 5 Georgia Bulldogs in those rankings. Chris Smith not among them. He's a little bit of a sleeper, but Laz doesn't sleep. We've established that. And
no,
he does not
and I'm going to Kirby continuing after the game today. I'm going to fire up the Game Boy Color and get Kirby going on there as well. So it just, the Kirby party will continue.
Gobbling up and absorbing talent. That's his modus operandi. Laz, thank you for joining. Thanks for hanging out. And thank you all for hanging out with the NFL Brekkie Show presented by the Next Gen Ford Everest. Conquer every day with the Next Gen Ford Everest. He's Laurie Horesh. I'm Phil Murphy. Thank you for joining us. We will see you next week in advance of the Bucs and the Cowboys.